There's this Arthur C. Clarke quote, right? Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. There's also the converse claim by Larry Niven or Terry Pratchett. Apparently, we're not quite sure that any sufficiently advanced magic is indistinguishable from technology, but I digress. Now, the point I would like to make here is that in computing, there is no magic. I mean, some things are pretty magical if you want to describe them that way, but say the new operator that gives you fresh objects in languages like C++ and Java, that's not magic. It doesn't just occur in some ephemeral, unknowable way. Your computer does an actual thing. Somebody wrote the code that makes it happen. You could certainly not care how something works. You could go, don't worry about it. And we do sometimes say magic idiomatically to mean that you shouldn't care about how a particular thing works. For example, you might explain that shared pointer in C++ uses a reference count per object. Then it's fairly easy to see when the count should be incremented and decremented and when the object should be deleted. That's a decent mental model for working with shared pointers. It explains why circular references are bad, for example, and why there's such a thing as a weak pointer. But how and where do we store this reference count? Magic, which is to say, for the purposes of explaining shared pointer, depending on who you're talking to, maybe you don't need to mention where this reference count actually lives. In order to use shared pointer, maybe it's fine not to know until you start doing multithreading or you have to care about your memory layout or whatever. And that's the problem with magic. You can't reason with it. Beginning programmers are often scared about pointers, right? I think there's too much magic in the explanations that they're getting. One of my pet peeves is how people talk about Java being an easier language because it doesn't have pointers. My dude, Java only has pointers. I know there are primitive types and calling it reference types isn't entirely meaningless, but it's pointers, right? There is no magic, only implementation details. In more limited systems, there could be things that you actually cannot achieve within the system. That's another place where you might say something is magic. And it actually means something, crossing a border out of a sandbox, handing off to a different system. In Java, you cannot peek arbitrary memory or interpret the bytes that make up a foo and use them as if they were a bar. At least I don't think so. I'm not hardcore into Java like that. I guess you might actually need that for serialization, which it does have, but maybe there is JVM magic for that. I don't actually know, but that reflects my own non-knowledge of how this actually works, because it does work a particular way, and it would certainly break the type and memory safety that the JVM is supposed to have, but still, somebody made the JVM. There is actual code running on your actual processor, and there's an actual way that it works.